Usually, when you picture a bank, your mind immediately goes to the physical security.
Right, like the fortress.
Exactly. You imagine, thick steel vaults, time-locked doors, maybe even lasers crossing the floor, or biometric
Oh
scanners.
yeah, the whole movie setup.
Right. And standing outside that vault, guarding the perimeter, is a highly trained watchdog. But in the financial world, that watchdog isn't a guy with a badge.
No.
It's the external auditor.
Yeah, and their entire professional existence is just dedicated to making sure the vault is secure, that the ledgers match, and that the money you deposited is actually sitting right where it's supposed to be.
Which is so important because that verification process is really the absolute bedrock of public trust.
Completely. I mean, you sleep soundly at night knowing your paycheck is safe, specifically because you believe those watchdogs are doing their jobs without compromise.
But the reality we're diving into today, it completely shatters that sense of security.
It really does.
Because what happens when the person whose literal job is to protect your money is secretly on the payroll of the people stealing it?
Yeah, it's a terrifying thought.
Right. We are looking at a scenario where the watchdog didn't just, fall asleep at the vault door. They actively unlocked it from the inside and helped carry out the bags.
Wow.
So today, welcome to a brand new deep dive. We are exploring one of the most audacious financial scandals in South African history, the VBS Mutual Bank collapse, which is pretty much universally known as the Great Bank Heist.
And honestly, the sheer scale of the corporate governance failure here is staggering.
It's unbelievable.
To dissect this, we are synthesizing a massive, really heavy-hitting stack of regulatory and investigative documents.
Right.
We're drawing from the definitive forensic investigators report authored by advocate Terry Motow. We're also looking closely at the Independent Regulatory Board for Auditors, or IRBA, and their final disciplinary findings.
Yeah.
But most importantly, we are going to look at the actual rulebook itself, the Auditing Profession Act, number 26 of 2005.
Which sounds dry, but I promise it's wild. Our mission for you listening today is to cut through the dense financial jargon that usually surrounds these kinds of banking collapses.
Because it's not just numbers on a page.
Exactly. If you live in one of the 14 municipalities that were devastated by this, the missing money wasn't an abstract accounting error. That was, your community's budget for road repairs, water infrastructure, basic public services, just vanishing overnight.
It's heartbreaking.
It is. So we're going to trace the anatomy of this heist by focusing intensely on the specific charges brought against the lead auditor, and we'll cross-reference those charges directly with the exact sections of the Auditing Profession Act that were contravened.
Right, because understanding a systemic collapse requires looking at the specific guardrails that were dismantled.
Yeah.
The VBS scandal wasn't merely a failure of a bank. It was a methodical, deliberate dismantling of the legal auditing framework designed to protect the public.
Okay, so let's set the scene of the crime before we look at the laws that were broken. When we talk about the Great Bank Heist, how much money are we actually talking about here? And how did it physically leave the building? Because I'm assuming they didn't dig a tunnel under the vault.
No tunnels. They moved roughly 2 billion rand out of VBS Mutual Bank.
2 billion. Wow.
Yeah, 2 billion. And the mechanism of the theft is fascinating because it relies almost entirely on manipulating perception.
Okay, how so?
Well, they used a combination of fictitious contract finance agreements and artificial deposits.
Wait, I want to pause on artificial deposits for a second.
Sure.
Because creating an artificial deposit sounds like something you do in a video game,
Yeah.
Not a registered financial institution.
Yeah.
How does a bank just create a deposit out of thin air?
It's crazy, but imagine opening your banking app, seeing a zero balance, and then someone with high-level IT access simply types a 1 followed by 9 zeros into the system.
The types of it.
Literally just types it. Suddenly, the system says you have 1 billion rand. That is an artificial deposit.
But there's no actual money.
Exactly. There are no underlying funds. No one handed over cash or transferred money from another institution. They just typed the numbers into the general ledger.
That is insane.
And then they use these inflated numbers to artificially boost VBS's income and use wildly complex accounting entries to conceal the massive losses as actual cash was being siphoned out the back door.
Okay, which means the internal books of the bank were pure fiction.
Complete fiction.
And that brings us to the watchdog. Enter Sipho Malaba.
Right. Sipho Malaba was a senior partner at KPMG South Africa, and crucially, he was the lead engagement partner responsible for the VBS audit.
So he's the guy in charge.
He was the ultimate authority on whether the bank's books were real or fake, And on July 17th, 2017, Malaba signed an unmodified audit opinion for VBS Mutual Bank.
An unmodified opinion that's essentially a completely clean bill of health, right?
Yes, exactly.
So to use an analogy, this is like a city health inspector walking up to a restaurant, never opening the kitchen fridge, but hanging a giant grade A sign in the window, fully knowing the fridge is completely empty and the kitchen is actually on fire.
That is a perfect analogy. The fraud relied entirely on that grade A sign.
Wow.
By signing that document, Malaba signaled to the public, the regulators, and those 14 vulnerable municipalities that VBS was financially sound.
Because if he doesn't sign it,
If he doesn't sign that paper, the South African Reserve Bank steps in, and the music stops immediately.
Okay, so I actually pulled up the Auditing Profession Act for this, specifically Section 44, subsections 2A and 3.
Oh, good. Let's get into the act.
Yeah, because the language here doesn't leave any room
Sure.
for I think it's fine.
No, it doesn't.
It mandates that a registered auditor cannot legally express an opinion that financial statements are a fair representation unless they are fully satisfied that the statements are properly prepared. And subsection 3 goes even further. It explicitly states the auditor must be satisfied that all assets and liabilities are actually accounted for, and that they've obtained all the necessary evidence to prove it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
The law demands verifiable physical proof. You cannot just take management's word for it.
Right.
And the IRBA disciplinary panel found that the audit failed across multiple massive material areas. The audit team obtained insufficient, inappropriate audit evidence for cash balances, loans, deposits, and income.
So basically everything.
Literally everything. By signing that clean opinion, Malaba flagrantly contravened Section 44. He signed off on the 2017 financials despite knowing that the amounts reported for cash and cash equivalents were grossly misstated.
He certified an empty vault as being full.
That's exactly what he did.
But if the vault is empty, the obvious question is how nobody else on the massive KPMG audit team noticed.
Right, because it's a huge team.
Yeah. I mean, a 2 billion rand hole isn't exactly a rounding error. But the truly dark part of this story is that the team did notice.
They absolutely did.
The alarms were sounding loud and clear.
The timeline of the discovery is super critical here. We have to look closely at the testimony of Kafuma Munalula. She was a qualified chartered accountant and the audit manager on the ground for the 2017 VBS audit.
So she's the one actually leading the fieldwork.
Exactly. She is looking at the actual granular data day in and day out.
Okay.
And by mid-May 2017, Munalula uncovers a catastrophic, undeniable discrepancy.
What did she find?
She compared VBS's actual bank statements, so the physical proof of cash held at other banks or the Reserve Bank, against VBS's internal general ledger. And the numbers simply did not match.
Which is like Audit 101.
Right.
If the internal ledger says you have a billion rand, but the bank statement from the Reserve Bank says you have 10 rand, the money is gone.
It's gone.
If I'm an audit manager and I see that, I am hitting the panic button immediately.
And she did. She hit the panic button repeatedly. Munalula testified that she raised the massive cash shortfall issue several times directly with her boss, the engagement partner, Sipho Malaba. She took her job seriously. She even included this massive discrepancy as a critical red flag issue to be raised formally with the VBS Audit Committee.
See, this is where the hierarchy of a corporate firm just gets weaponized. She did her job, escalated to the partner, and what does Malaba do?
He dismisses her completely.
Of course.
He tells her, and I quote, "I am auditing the cash section." He unilaterally takes that section of the audit out of her hands.
Wow.
And then he actively causes her warnings to be removed from the audit committee reports. He deliberately buries the red flags.
He just deletes the warnings?
Yep.
Which, I mean, that shifts the entire conversation from professional negligence to an active, deliberate cover-up.
Absolutely.
Because seeing a massive financial crime and choosing to hide it has to trigger a whole different set of laws.
It does. It triggers one of the most powerful mechanisms in the Auditing Profession Act, Section 45.
Okay, what's that?
This covers the duty to report on irregularities. Under Section 45, an auditor is legally mandated to report a reportable irregularity to IRBA without delay.
And the Act defines a reportable irregularity as any unlawful act or omission committed by management that has caused or is likely to cause material financial loss.
Right.
I mean, creating fake deposits to siphon 2 billion rand is the textbook definition of a material financial loss.
Oh, without a doubt. And Malaba intentionally failed to report this irregularity to the regulator.
Just blatantly ignored Section 45.
But the legal contraventions deepen significantly when we turn to Section 52 of the Act.
Okay.
Sections 52(1)A and 52(1)B elevate this from a regulatory misstep to a criminal offense.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. These sections state that it is a crime to fail to report a reportable irregularity or to knowingly and recklessly express a false audit opinion.
Wait, let's underline that. We aren't just talking about a breach of professional ethics or a fine anymore. We are talking about breaking criminal law.
Exactly. And the forensic investigator, Advocate Terry Matau, was incredibly blunt in his final report.
What did he say?
His analysis explicitly stated that Malaba approved and signed off on the 2017 financial statements, fully knowing of the falsities and inaccuracies. Matau's report concludes with 3 simple, devastating words regarding Malaba's conduct. This is fraud.
Oh, this is fraud.
Yeah.
I have to admit, I am genuinely struggling to understand the workplace dynamic here.
It's hard to wrap your head around.
Right, like in a massive global Big Four firm like KPMG, how does one single partner have like God mode access?
Seriously.
How does he just hit delete on a manager's red flags, take over the cash section, and sign a fraudulent opinion without triggering some massive internal compliance alarm?
You'd think there'd be an alarm.
The law has to require some sort of systemic failsafe to prevent one rogue partner from sinking the entire ship.
Well, the law does demand a failsafe, which brings us to another critical contravention.
Okay.
Section 41(6)C of the Auditing Profession Act. It explicitly prohibits a registered auditor from performing audits unless adequate risk management practices and procedures are in place.
So by structuring the audit in a way that allowed Malaba to shut down Munalula's findings in a vacuum, the firm itself bypassed basic risk management.
Exactly. The fact that a senior partner could unilaterally alter audit committee reports and remove a subordinate's critical findings without automatically triggering an independent review, that reveals a catastrophic failure of those required risk management practices.
Right.
It was a structural blind spot that allowed a compromised individual to completely override the safety net designed by Section 41.
Okay, so we've established the mechanics of the crime and the specific laws broken.
Right.
We have Section 44 for failing to verify the assets.
Yeah.
Section 45 for hiding the irregularities.
Yep.
Section 41 for the breakdown in risk management. And Section 52 for the fraudulent signing of the document.
That's the list.
So the logical question is, why?
The motive.
Yeah. What kind of leverage or incentive makes a senior, highly paid partner at a top-tier global firm risk his entire reputation and his freedom to hit the mute button on a bank heist?
Well, the forensic report and IRBA's exhaustive findings laid the motive completely bare.
Okay.
It was a massive, carefully concealed conflict of interest. Sipho Malaba was personally benefiting from the VBS looting.
Of course he was.
Yeah, the investigations revealed that he received financial benefits to the tune of about 25 million rand from his improper conduct.
25 million rand.
Unbelievable, right?
To frame that for you listening, it is like a referee secretly taking a multi-million rand payout from one of the teams playing in the game they are currently officiating.
Exactly.
You are financially incentivized to look the other way when they break the rules.
Yeah.
But, wait, how did they hide 25 million rand?
They hid it through a web of linked entities. The evidence showed Malaba held multiple massive loan facilities with VBS Mutual Bank itself.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, these loans totaled more than 18 million rand and were funneled through corporate entities linked to him, most notably a company called Betsonologics.
And let me guess, these weren't standard home loans with a normal interest rate.
Far from it. The forensic investigator completely rubbished Malaba's explanations that these were standard, arm's-length business dealings.
I bet.
Matau noted that these massive credit facilities were essentially rewards, direct compensation for his complicity in keeping the audit clean.
Wow.
Furthermore, Malaba completely hid this financial relationship from his own firm, KPMG.
Which destroys the absolute most fundamental rule of auditing independence.
Precisely.
You cannot objectively audit a bank when you secretly owe that same bank 18 million rand.
You really can't. And once the IRBA disciplinary panel stepped in, the full weight of the regulatory framework came crashing down.
I'm sure.
They didn't just look at the 2017 VBS audit in isolation either. They found Malaba guilty on 8 separate, severe charges of improper conduct.
Wait, break down the scope of those 8 charges. Was this pattern of behavior isolated just to VBS?
That's the craziest part, no. The charges actually spanned 3 different audits.
You're kidding.
Nope. There were 6 subcharges specifically related to VBS Mutual Bank. But the panel also brought one charge relating to his audit of a medical scheme called Spectrum and another charge relating to the Industrial Development Corporation, or the IDC.
Including Spectrum and the IDC is such a crucial detail
Why is that?
because it proves this wasn't just a one-off lapse in judgment because he got in too deep with VBS.
Right.
This was a systemic behavioral pattern of violating auditing standards across multiple major clients.
Yeah, absolutely.
What were the specific charges IRBA leveled against him?
The charges mapped directly back to those catastrophic failures we discussed. They included the failure to act with integrity and independence. They cited profound dishonesty in performing his audit duties.
Wow.
Yeah, they formally charged him with the failure to comply with auditing standards, issuing a misleading audit opinion, executing deficient agreed-upon procedures, and outright misrepresentation in his external communications.
Okay, so when IRBA throws the book at an auditor for all of that, what does the actual punishment look like?
The professional consequences were absolute. IRBA imposed a permanent disqualification from registration as an auditor.
Good.
Yeah, he is struck from the role and can never practice in the profession again.
And financially?
Financially, they hit him with severe penalties and cost orders that totaled nearly 10.8 million rand.
Wow, okay.
And beyond the regulatory punishment, IRBA referred the entire matter to the South African Institute of Chartered Accountants and, crucially, to the National Prosecuting Authority for criminal consideration under Section 52.
Good. Because, like we said, Section 52 makes it a crime.
Exactly.
And the fallout wasn't limited just to Malaba, right? The firm that failed to implement the risk management practices we talked about, they paid a massive price, too.
Huge. KPMG suffered incalculable reputational damage in South Africa. Ultimately, they had to reach a confidential settlement with the VBS liquidators.
How much was it?
They paid out in the region of 500 million rand simply to compensate the creditors for the negligent audits that allowed the looting to continue.
500 million rand.
Yes.
I mean, a 10.8 million rand fine for Malaba and a 500 million rand settlement from KPMG. On paper, that sounds like heavy, definitive justice.
It does sound like a lot.
But I think we need to look at the reality of those numbers. We are talking about elderly depositors losing their life savings. We're talking about 14 municipalities that lost the funds meant to keep their communities functioning.
It's devastating.
So does ruining one auditor's career and fining a firm 500 million rand actually balance the scales when roughly 2 billion rand just evaporated into thin air?
That tension right there is the tragic reality of white-collar crime.
Right.
The regulatory sanctions from IRBA serve very specific, punitive, and protective objectives. They permanently remove a dangerous actor from the financial ecosystem, and they send a terrifying signal of deterrence to the rest of the auditing profession.
Which is important.
It is, but they do not make the victims whole. The fines and settlements are a fraction of the 2 billion rand that was stolen. The legal framework of the Auditing Profession Act is highly effective at punishing the breach of duty after the fact, but it deeply struggles to repair the catastrophic real-world damage caused by that breach.
It's a really sobering reality to process. We've unpacked how the VBS bank heist wasn't just a story about corrupt bankers moving money around.
No, not at all.
It was a profound, calculated failure of the auditing safety net.
Exactly. And by cross-referencing Malaba's actions with the Auditing Profession Act, the exact anatomy of that failure becomes totally clear.
Right.
Section 44 was violated the moment he failed to demand verifiable proof of the cash. Section 45 was ignored when the legal duty to report the 2 billion rand irregularity was silenced.
Yeah.
Section 41 was bypassed because KPMG's risk management lacked the fail-safes to stop one partner from overriding an entire audit. And Section 52 was triggered by the reckless, fraudulent signing of an opinion that certified an empty vault.
The legal framework designed to protect the public was systematically dismantled from the inside by the exact person hired to enforce it.
It's just wild.
The watchdog didn't just fail to bark. The watchdog was fed a 25 million rand stake to look the other way while the house was robbed.
And it exposes a massive vulnerability in our global financial ecosystem. I mean, trust is the actual currency of the banking sector.
Completely.
When the auditors themselves compromise their integrity, the entire system faces moral and financial bankruptcy.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to mull over.
Yeah, think about this.
If the laws in the Auditing Profession Act are already this clear, this detailed, and this strict,
Very strict.
right, if the penalties include lifetime bans and criminal charges, yet a senior partner at a top-tier global firm could still bypass all of them for a 25 million rand payout? Is the real problem the regulations themselves?
Good question.
Or is there an unfixable inherent flaw in the very model of for-profit companies auditing other for-profit companies? Think back to the bank vault. If the person guarding the vault is paid their salary by the person who owns the vault, how safe is your money, really?
It's a profound structural tension that the entire auditing profession has to grapple with if it ever hopes to fully restore the public's trust.
Definitely something to keep in mind the next time you hear a massive corporation has been given a clean audit. Thanks for joining us on this deep dive.